approved. John, you mentioned to me that we were not going to approve the minutes from last month's meeting because Mia noticed something wasn't quite right with them, so we'll postpone until next month?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so I guess that takes us to appeals. Oh, actually, do we want to do either of the minutes, John? There's two.
No, we're going to
minutes.
postpone both minutes. They're not in Legistar right now, so.
Okay, sounds good. All right, then we'll move on to hearings and appeals. The first one that we have up is ZBA 17019, 2146 Amelia Place. John, take it away.
I'm John Barrett, zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. The first petition this evening is Zoning Board of Appeals 17-019. The address is 2146 Amelia Place. David and Krista Golden, property owners, are requesting a variance from Chapter 55 zoning, Section 5:27, in order to construct an approximately 180 square foot enclosed porch. The required rear yard setback for the district is 40 feet. The request of 14 feet 4 inches will allow the new porch to be 25 feet 8 inches from the rear property line. The property is zoned R1B, single-family residential, which requires a 40-foot rear yard setback. The lot size is 10,236 square feet in area, and the home was built in 1985. The new covered porch will replace the existing porch, which has deteriorated in the last 30 years. The new porch will not encroach any further into the rear yard setback than the previous porch, as it's in the same footprint. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors. The first slide is the location map. You see the highlighted property, and it's just off St. Francis Drive, south of East Stadium. The next slide is the location aerial map, and you see the property in relationship to the area. The next slide is the enlarged photo of the property. You can see the existing deck and the foundation right here. The proposal is to reconstruct a new deck in the exact same footprint. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. And this is the area where the proposed porch, enclosed porch will be. Next slide is a site plan that was submitted showing the same thing as the survey. This is a floor plan of the enclosed porch, proposed enclosed porch. It's approximately 17 feet wide by 10 feet deep for an approximately 180 square feet. This is the south elevation, which is existing, showing the existing enclosed porch. This is the proposed elevation. It's a little difficult to see on this screen, but you have it in your packet as well. Shows a more of a gabled roof enclosed porch. These are photos that were submitted with the application by the applicants. Showing down here shows the deterioration in some of the supports. And these are inside the porch, a panoramic view. More photos that were submitted with the application by the property owners. And here are my photos the day I made the inspection at the property. You see the subject property from the front of the house. This is from the left side of the house, looking directly at the wood deck and the enclosed porch as it exists today. That's a more close version of the existing porch. This is from the right side of the rear yard, looking directly at the porch. Just a side elevation. This is with my back to the rear porch and at the abutting property owners. This is to the right of the subject property and to the right of the abutting properties. And this is directly to the left. This is the left neighbor's property And that's the end of staff's presentation.
Thanks, John. Does anyone have questions for staff?
Yes.
So this picture, it looks as though that's a screened porch,
Correct.
and the elevation shows that it's going to be an enclosed room with low-E windows.
Yes.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, if there's any members of the public that are here to speak on this, you're welcome. Or, yeah, sorry, the petitioner first is welcome to step up, state their name for the record, sign in.
Okay. David Golden and
Krista
Krista
Golden.
Golden. You want to say this? So I guess we're asking for the variance because we want to replace the existing structure, which is failing, obviously. And the elevation change, you can see from some of the photos that the backyard is quite slopey, and we really need some sort of structure there. And so we wanted to improve the appearance of that structure a little bit, since we're going to replace it, or we'd like to replace it, so.
And it won't impact any of our neighbors, any,
Yeah, there should be in your packet some letters from all of our immediate neighbors as well. And I believe there was another email sent, John, last week, or over the weekend, from one of our neighbors.
Yes, we have several,
Yeah,
we have 3 correspondences from your neighbors.
oh, there was another one, a fourth one, too.
they were out of the country at the time,
Yeah,
so.
their names are. Oops.
You're right. We have additional ones that aren't in the packet. There is one,
Right.
should have 4 total. We do.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I believe there's 3 in support and 1 opposed.
Opposed?
No, it was in
No,
support.
it was support. The
Well, I
email
have
was-
one that's opposed as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay. I guess that's,
You have a total of 4? Okay.
Yep, there are 3 with the packet
Yep.
that are all in support of it, and then 1 additional that is not in support.
From Ridge Avenue,
I'm sorry?
from Ridge Avenue,
Mhm.
the street parallel behind.
Oh, okay.
okay. Guess-
Mike and Dave, is it?
Yeah, so, anything else to say?
I
No,
don't think so.
Okay. We'll open up questions.
I actually have questions for the petitioner. So you have an existing screened-in porch,
Right.
so a seasonal structure,
Right.
and which does now go into the rear setback.
Right.
So you're proposing to enclose it to a year-round structure?
No, I mean, it won't be heated or cooled.
But it's going to be,
It's just gonna
it won't
have-
be a screened porch, it'll be a closed-in.
Yeah, it will have windows and some, it'll have opening windows and some fixed
And you're
windows.
changing the roof line
Right.
to be a gabled thing. I noticed, I actually was there today, and frankly, I would support doing this as a screened-in porch and maintaining the way it is now. I have some difficulty allowing it to become an enclosed, because I'm not sure where the hardship is that
Okay.
allows us to have it be an enclosed, less than seasonal, potentially year-round. You say it
Okay.
won't be heated, but
Right.
it could be heated at some point in the future if we allow this.
I see.
So I
I
I
guess we
would
wouldn't do it-
strongly support doing it, just replacing the structure with a screened-in porch, and my guess is they could do it with, as just an alteration to a, they couldn't, if they just
No,
kept it as a-
they're removing the entire structure.
Oh, they
So,
are?
once they remove it, then they'll have to get, and then replace with a new one, they'll have to get a variance.
Okay, but you're not changing the footprint at all.
No, we're not.
The main change that I see that could be objectionable, and is in fact objectionable to the one letter we received from a neighbor on Ridge Street, is that by enclosing it, you're turning it into a, more of a year-round use
I
potentially.
see.
So I'm going to grapple with this, and I'll look to my fellow board members to
Okay.
see where they are on this.
mean, I
But
guess,
certainly, it's there now. If it's failing, I think I would support replacing it as it is, but I find it difficult to come to a point where I would support turning it into an enclosed year-round structure. And that's how I leave to other people.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions, Nicole?
It looks like, or actually, I just want to ask, is the intent that the new roof line is covering that kind of narrow walkway around the porch? I can see in that photo that's up there now, yeah. So between the existing building and the railing, is that covered by the new roof? Or is the building itself?
I believe
going all way out?
the overhang would probably cover that.
yeah,
But all that would have to be replaced because the structure is 30 years old and I don't think there were proper footings done, which is why we need to replace it so we can put proper footings in to maintain the integrity.
right.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Heather?
So the new, the replacement is going to be to the, not really to the face of the screen right now, but it would actually be out at the level of the railing? Is that what I'm seeing on the site plan?
Yes, there wouldn't be no external railing to the structure.
Right, so now it looks like it's maybe a foot or two back?
Right.
But the new addition would
Right.
actually
The-
be where the railing
Where,
is?
where the deck, where the railing is. You're right.
So we're actually, you are extending the enclosed area to the railing?
Yeah, I guess, the enclosure, but the deck structure underneath is the same size.
Any other questions? Kirk?
Just briefly, did you purchase the home with this screen and porch on the
Yes,
deck?
it was
Mhm.
30 years old, so yes, we purchased it in 2005, so yes.
And more out of curiosity, were you aware when you purchased the home that this structure was non-conforming?
And no, I was not, no.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
If there are any members of the public that would like to speak on this matter, you're welcome to step forward, sign in, and state your name for the record. I'm seeing no one, so we are in discussion. Heather?
I guess I'm a little confused. First off, the subject, I think, in most places it says it's 019 and the staff report says 21. I don't know if that matters at all. But the first paragraph says, the request would allow the new porch to be 25 feet 8 inches from the rear property line. But the proposed site plan shows it as 28.7 feet?
I had to convert 0.7 inches to feet. So
Says it
it's going to be 28.8 feet from the property line. And it's 28 point.
rather than the 25 that says on the front.
So it's a matter of checking the math then?
That's a typo, the 25. It's going to be 28 feet 8 inches, and the request is for 14 feet 4 inches.
Thank you.
Okay. And, John, just
Yes.
for clarification, is it case 19 or case 21?
It's 19.
Okay. Kirk?
A question for staff. I know we always take neighbor objection pretty seriously. I just wanted to check on a couple of assertions in this letter. One was that any other neighbor requesting a variance to encroach into the rear yard setback would have legal standing to have their request granted. Is that the case?
You know, Kirk, I'm not an attorney, but each case is separate, and it has to be determined on its own terms of its own merit. So I don't think you could, say, next month, someone wants a variance, and they automatically are granted it because another property was granted the variance. You can't automatically brush all variances across the board as a passing variance because someone else got one. So each case is separate and stands on its own.
So what we do here, what I've understood is that it doesn't create precedent necessarily.
One could possibly argue that, but you couldn't use that as a finding of fact.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dave?
I do want to point out for the other members of the board, since I did tour the site, the topography here is interesting, and there's a swale between the properties on Ridge Street and the properties on Amelia Court, and drainage dips down. So there's a deep slope on this property already. It's not, it's not like you can have a playing field, a soccer field in the backyard, but there are lots of things you can do in it. But and I noticed some of the, maybe the gutter drains were run from the neighbors' houses and maybe from yours as well, back to that swale to help run off from the tops of the roofs to get into that swale area instead of going down into our storm sewer system out in the front. So I think it's a really interesting drainage setup back there. I would guess you don't get a lot of water infiltration in your basements like we do in my neighborhood. But if you look at the aerial photo, the structure of the house is already set back further into the backyard than either of the neighbors, your immediately adjacent neighbors. For me, and I'm in favor of porches, especially front porches, but to extend enclosed areas that once we granted it, you could turn it into a year-round heated space. I'm reluctant to do that because we are moving into these setbacks, which we have in the zoning code, and I would really need strong reason to do that. I would be very favorable to replacing the structure with a screened-in porch, as you have already, but I think probably I'll end up voting against doing it with the plans that you've submitted. Now, my vote may not matter. I don't know how the other people feel on the board.
Todd?
Yes, I always hesitate to disagree with Dave, particularly when I've been out on the property and seen it personally, and I have not. But for me, the deciding factor is that the replacement porch is not going to have eat into the rear setback any more than the current one. And to me, that's the deciding factor, that it might be enclosed, it might have windows that would open wide in the summer, but then you would enclose them in the winter. That's neither here nor there for me. I'm not uncomfortable by the fact that the porch might be enclosed, or you might have a gas or kerosene heater or whatever is allowed. So I'm actually in favor of this. To me, that's the single deciding factor. It's not going to move any closer to the rear yard line than the current one.
Thanks, Todd. Anyone else?
I guess I'm still on the fence, because it actually is 2 feet bigger than the existing screen porch. It's actually going out to the edge of the deck.
With the footprint.
Well, but the wood deck can be in the rear setback. That's. John, where is it?
Yes,
So
the
it
wood
would-
deck can be, but the structure itself cannot.
Right, so we're actually, what we're looking at is actually something that's gonna be about 2 feet bigger than the existing structure. So,
Well,
and it's gonna be an enclosed room,
Mhm.
so I'm,
Nicole, did you have something?
I had the same similar comment, that that actually is larger than what the current wall locations are.
Todd?
Yeah, so I guess, maybe I'm confused, maybe I misunderstood. So the porch itself is not going to be any closer, but the enclosed, the window wall, so to speak, will be a little closer to the rear.
Yeah, so my,
The little space in the back here where you can walk narrowly, that's going to be eaten up by a new enclosed structure.
yeah, I think that's where maybe our definitions of what the structure is kind of coming
Right.
into play. So as this is designed, we would be moving the wall out to where the edge of the porch fence is, or the deck fence is, that kind of slip there, yeah.
But the footprint isn't any different. I mean, the window wall is moving, but the footprint is no closer to the
I
back.
think it depends
So
on
it's
your
it's a very
definition
subtle
of,
distinction.
I think it depends on the definition of the structure. If you believe that the structure is the enclosed area right now that has roof over it, it is smaller than what's proposed.
I'm still in favor.
Let me clarify. The enclosed structure will be 10 feet 3 inches off the rear, like as in the proposed floor plan. That additional approximately 2 feet is the roof line. It's going to have a roof that overhang. So the actual wall of the foundation comes 10 feet 3 inches.
Yeah, okay.
But the overall footprint with the roof and coming straight down in a plane will encompass the 14 feet 4 inches.
And we just did that because of it's a southern exposure, so the roof would shade.
So I'll just repeat that for those watching on TV. The petitioner mentioned that it was done because there's a southern exposure for the shade. Dave?
Another question. Is there an existing foundation here? Because it looks like it's a piered structure with posts that might be in the piers. Are they going to expand it by putting a full foundation under this? Or is it going to be a piered structure still?
No, it's still gonna be piered.
Piered construction.
Okay.
Any other items for discussion? Kirk?
From a theoretical standpoint, I guess I struggle with this because when things are non-conforming, they're usually for a reason that you want to actually do away with the nonconformity over time, and that's just the basis for having rules. With regard to this, and this has come up in some other enclosed additions in different neighborhoods. The footprint is largely staying the same. I think any argument you could make from a neighbor perspective, the appearance will be much enhanced. So I think from any potential dispute from the surrounding neighbors, I think that this would be viewed favorably upon completion. And yeah, I'm inclined to support this, given that they're staying within the same envelope roughly. And I think aesthetically will be a huge benefit.
Thanks. Any other items for discussion or a motion?
All right, are these, I'll make the motion if the numbers are right in this, what we've been on our case.
So it's 19, yep. What we've got on the motion is correct.
Okay.
And I think the only thing that we'll need to update is that it's 28 feet.
Still 25.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
Petition
Including-
ZBA 17-019, 2146 Amelia Place. Variance. Based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variances from Chapter 55, Section 527, Area, Height, and Placement Regulations to allow a 180-square-foot enclosed porch to be constructed 25 feet 8 inches from the rear property line. This will require a 14-foot 4-inch variance. The porch is to be constructed per the submitted plans. A, the alleged practical difficulties are peculiar to the property and result from conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. B, that the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience, inability to attain a higher financial return, or both. C, the variance, if granted, will not significantly affect surrounding properties. D, the circumstances of the variance request are not self-imposed. E, the variance request is the minimum necessary to achieve reasonable use of the structure.
Second? By Kirk. We'll do a roll call vote. Heather?
I guess I can't vote for the 25 feet 8 because it doesn't match what the plan says.
So maybe we want to
The-
clarify
the-
that once
The
more.
plan is, the proposed, the floor plan shows it at 10 feet, but the overall structure with that overhang is going to be 25 feet, 4 inches, 8 inches from the property line for a total of 14 feet, 4-inch variance. That's including the overhang, so the overall footprint is going to be 14 feet, 4 inches into the rear yard setback.
Yes,
So the footprint's the same.
I vote yes.
Okay. Todd?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
And I vote yes. Julie? Sorry, I keep forgetting you. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
All right, great. This variance is granted. Moving on to the next one. This is ZBA 17020, 1902 Independence Boulevard.
Okay?
Tom?
Jean Carl Bird, property owner, is requesting a variance from Chapter 55 zoning, Section 5:54, subsections 2B, open space, of 3 feet 6 inches in order to install a 2-foot by 4-foot generator in the front setback. The average front setback is 21 feet 6 inches. If the request is approved, the front setback will be established at 18 feet. The property is zoned R1C, single-family residential, and is located on a corner lot. The corner lot requires 2 front yards. The lot is 8,450 square feet in size. The existing residence is approximately 1,888 square feet in size and was built in 1940. The 2-foot by 4-foot generator is required to be installed a minimum of 5 feet from the home for proper ventilation. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors, you'll see the location map. It's right here highlighted. It's at the corner of, right at Independence and Victoria, I believe that is.
Yes.
Next is the location aerial. The next photo is showing the enhanced property. The property owner is proposing to locate the generator right around this area. And as you know, on a corner lot, you have 2 front setbacks. The average of these the setbacks along here is required at 21 feet. So she needs to be 18 feet off the front property line. So a request of 3 feet 6 inches. The next slide is a survey of the property. This is a small site plan that was submitted with the application, and the generator will be located somewhere along this left side of the house. These are the photos I took when I was at the site. Subject property. This is looking at the kind of the side yard from front and side yard combination. You see the vegetation along Victoria. More of the side yard. This is looking from Victoria directly at the property on the side yard. And then the generator would be installed somewhere along here. You see the thick vegetation from the public right-of-way. Another photo of the property from the right-of-way. More right-of-way in the property in its current state. This is the existing gas meter, I believe, in the house, and it's going to be located somewhere in this area. Just more of the side of the property. This is from the rear of the house, looking towards the front. And this is a generator that's proposed to be installed. That's the end of my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'll take them right now.
Thanks, John. Any questions for staff? Go ahead, Doug.
Yes, maybe the petitioners would know as well, John, but in their handwritten comments is the note that it's unsafe to have a very long gas line. Would you confirm that with the gas folks? And it seems intuitive to me, but I don't have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I didn't call the gas company, but I'm sure it's preferable to have a shorter line than running a 40-foot trench line. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions for staff? Dave?
So if this is really in the side yard, even though it's because it's a corner lot, what would the normal side setback be on this? If we were just thinking of it as a
It'd
side
be,
yard?
the normal side setback in R1C is 5 feet,
5 feet, okay. Thank you.
and it's, all mechanical equipment has to be located outside the front yard. So if her house was moved back and she was at 26 feet and the house, and the required front setback was 25, then she'd be outside of it then. But it's because the average and a double corner lot frontage, they just don't want mechanical equipment in front yards.
Well, it's not going to be in the front yard, it'll be in the side yard.
Technically.
Right.
Any other questions for staff? Kirk?
Just out of curiosity, I mean, is this type of equipment treated the same as an air conditioning compressor, or I just haven't, I don't remember.
Yes,
recall
it
seeing
is.
a petition
Mhm.
like this before. So similarly, you could not locate an air conditioning unit in a similar front yard?
In the required front yard, yes.
Okay.
So if your required front yard was 25 feet, it couldn't be located within that first 25 feet. But if your house was 50 feet back from the road, once you were outside of that 25-foot setback, if you wanted to have it up to your house and you were 50 feet off the front setback, you could. But you just can't have it in that front setback area.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Heather?
The lot just to the south looks like it doesn't have a building on it.
Correct. That's just been annexed, and it belongs to the petitioner as well.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, if the petitioner's here, they're welcome to step up, state their name for the record, sign in.
My name is Jean Carlbert. I live at 1902 Independence Boulevard. My neighborhood has usually 2 power failures a year. When it's in the winter, it's particularly challenging if you have to move out of your house in order to stay warm. So we are very interested in having a generator installed for our own safety and for our own comfort. In talking with the company that would install the generator, if it is placed in the rear of the house, it will require a very long gas line. It also will have to go around a door, which is on the west side. They can't run it along the bottom of the door frame. They would have to run it up and around. That adds almost 14 feet to the gas line. We also hope to add a bedroom and a handicapped accessible bathroom to the rear of the house. So if it had to be located in the rear, it's almost 70 feet of a gas line that would be required. To me, that seems like an unsafe situation. I think the company would probably say 70 feet of gas line outside is doable. However, it is a tremendous expense to have that length of gas line running. I don't like the idea of a gas line that's making right-hand turns around a door for that length, given the difficulties of our winters. So that is why we are requesting a variance for a 2-foot by 4-foot generator. It is not visible from the neighbor across the street. It's not visible from any other neighbors, so nobody else will be impacted by this generator. I think that's it. If you have
Thank
any
you.
questions for me?
Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you. If there's any members of the public that would like to step up and weigh in on this? I'm seeing none, so we are in discussion.
We have one letter also.
Oh, yeah, actually, there was another one that was additional too. So we had 2 letters of support for this. And we're in discussion. Julie?
I think one of the things about this that I feel is a good thing is that by placing the generator in the proposed spot, it seems to pull it more away from neighbors. And one of the things about generators is they tend to be loud, and if that impacts the person running it more than any of the neighbors, I think that's a good thing. And these are not attractive, but the yard is attractive, and it seems as if the petitioner is concerned with how things look and probably will do a good job of essentially hiding this. But that's my main thing that I like about this, is that it does kind of protect the neighbors from the potential downsides of a generator. So I'm going to support this.
Dave?
Yeah, when I looked at the site today, there is substantial vegetative screening here. And probably it's a very modest generator. I see this really as more of a side yard than a front yard, and it would be well within the setback considering that. There are no sidewalks here, unfortunately. So, there are? It doesn't look like it. On that side, on both?
Sides of the house have sidewalks.
Oh, the trees cover, so you've got a sidewalk
There you
there?
go. There's your
But there isn't
vegetation.
on the other side of the street?
Correct.
Okay. So, yeah, I was actually parked on the other side. That's why I noticed there weren't sidewalks. I didn't look closely enough, obviously. The gas meter is up near the front of the house, really, and I think that's where the generator should be, so I'll be voting for this. I think it's going to have minimal to no impact on any of the neighbors.
Any other discussion items or a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Kirk?
Petition ZBA 17-020, 1902 Independence Boulevard. Variance. Based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variances from Chapter 55, Section 554, 2B, open space to allow a 2-foot by 4-foot generator to be located in the front setback. The generator will be installed 18 feet from the average front setback. The average front setback required is 21 feet 6 inches. Can I point out that this is the front setback from Victoria and not from Independence?
Okay.
A, the alleged practical difficulties are peculiar to the property line and result from conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. B, that the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience, inability to attain a higher financial return, or both. C, the variance, if granted, will not significantly affect surrounding properties. D, the circumstances of the variance request are not self-imposed. E, the variance request is the minimum necessary to achieve reasonable use of the structure.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Todd? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Julie?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The variance is granted. Okay, moving on. The next case we have is ZBA 17-021, 904 Willow Street. John?
Okay. Canopy Landscapes, representing property owners Ken and Patty Miller, are requesting a variance from Chapter 55 zoning, Section 5:29, in order to construct a 91-square-foot enclosed rear porch. The required rear yard setback is 20 feet to the district. The request of 9 feet 6 inches will allow the new porch to be 10 feet 6 inches from the rear property line. The property is zoned R1D, single-family residential, which requires the 20-foot rear yard setback. The lot is 3,528 square feet in area. The new addition will replace the previous porch, which was already demolished due to its dilapidated condition. The new porch will not encroach any further into the rear yard setback than the previous porch. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors, you'll see the location map. The property is highlighted. It's just west of North 7th and south of Miller Avenue. You see the location map aerial view. I believe that's West Park to the east. And you see the enhanced aerial. The rear yard is back here where my pointer is, and the new proposed porch will be back here. This is the survey that was submitted with the application. It's going to be a 13-by-7 proposed rear porch. As you can see, the home already is into that rear setback, and this corner, which would be the closest to the rear property line, is 10 feet 6 inches off that rear yard. And this was the sketch plan that was submitted that showed the previous porch that was already at the home that has been demolished. And these are an aerial, rear view and side view elevation sketches, drawings of what the proposed porch will look like, coming off the back of the house. These are my photos from my inspection, the subject property. This is the left side of the house as you're going down the driveway towards the garage and the rear yard. This is the current state of the rear door, rear access out to the rear yard. As you can see, the previous porch was already removed. Significant drop off if you walk out the back door. Front view of the proposed porch where it's going to be. There's a side view. You see adjacent properties and the rear yard, and the location of the new porch is going to be right here. This is with my back to the home, looking at the abutting property. It's fenced, heavily vegetated. That's looking to the east at the other adjacent properties and abutting properties. And that is the end of my staff presentation. I will take questions.
Thanks, John. Any questions for staff? Once, twice? All right. If the petitioner's here, they're welcome to step up, state their name for the record, and sign in.
My name is Vern Moore with Canopy Landscapes.
And I'm Patty Miller, one of the property owners. Who's looking forward to getting a back porch.
And I just wanted to clarify something that John said to the one drawing that we submitted, the sketch with the showing the old back porch was actually a City of Ann Arbor drawing on the website from the tax assessor. So we don't really have any other proof that footprint existed, but that's, that's from the tax assessor. So I just wanted to point that out. And the variance request it is a little bit wider, but again, it sticks into the setback the same distance as the old one. The old one had a shed roof with glass windows. Our proposal is the same, to do a shed roof with glass windows. It is also a 3-season room. But again, as we heard on the previous one, I suppose that could be conditioned at some point, but that's not the intent of this one at all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you. Are there any members of the public here that would wish to address the board? Seeing none?
I can tell you all my neighbors
Do you have any letter?
We did not get any letters that I see in the packet related to this, but we are in discussion. Dave?
I have to say, the 3 properties to the immediate west of this, these places are really packed into small lots. And your neighbor immediately to the west is for sale right now by Reinhardt. And so I went into the backyard and just looked. And if you look at, we have the aerial of the neighborhood. And I don't know if you could see it from there. You can see it looking toward Maple Ridge. Every one of those 3 structures goes almost up to the lot line. In fact, the one closest to Maple Ridge does go to the lot line. There are no backyards really there to your west. And I know this is a 3-season porch, and I raised the issue with the last one, but I see this as a real modest replacement of an existing porch that fits, is probably more modest than whatever, I don't know when your neighbors put their additions back to the lot line or if they did it before there was zoning or not. But you're going to have more of a backyard than any of your neighbors to the west, even with this addition. So this is one that I'll be able to support.
Thanks, Dave. Any other discussion items? Or a motion?
Kirk, your turn.
I'm happy to read them, but. I'll
Okay,
read the motion.
motion by Kirk.
This is regarding petition ZBA 17-021, 904 Willow Street. Variance based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variances from Chapter 55, Section 5:29, Area Height and Placement Regulations to allow a 91 square foot enclosed rear porch to be constructed 10 feet 6 inches from the rear property line. The variance request is for a total of 9 feet 6 inches. The porch shall be constructed per the submitted plans. A, the alleged practical difficulties are peculiar to the property and result from conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. B, that the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience, inability to attain a higher financial return, or both. C, the variance if granted will not significantly affect surrounding properties. D, the circumstances of the variance request are not self-imposed. And E, the variance request is the minimum necessary to achieve reasonable use of the structure.
Support.
Okay, seconded by Dave. We'll do a roll call vote. Todd?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The variance is granted. Okay. Next one is ZBA 17-018, 1510 Morton Avenue. John? Or Morton Street? Which one is it?
Morton Ave.
Ave. Okay.
Morton Avenue. Rebecca and Norton Fogel are requesting a variance from Chapter 104 Fences, Section 8:4341C, to allow a 10-foot tall, 100% opaque fence to be installed in the rear yard. The property is zoned R1D Single Family Residential. The subject parcel is located on the south side of Morton Avenue, due east of Packard Street. The property is 6,621 square feet in area, and the home was built in 1927. The applicants are requesting to install 4 8-foot wide panels of 10 feet in height and 100% opaque along the eastern property line within their rear yard. The fencing will be adjacent to the neighbor's porch. The applicant states the fence will neutralize the residual effects of lighting and noise from the neighbor's screen porch. If you will turn your attention to the monitors and follow along, you'll see the property is just on the south side of Morton Avenue, just east of Packard. The location aerial map. The next slide is the enhanced view of the property, and the applicants are proposing to install the 10-foot fence right along this property line, right in this area right here. The next slide is the survey that was submitted by the property owners with the application, approximate location of the 10-foot tall fence sections, and you see it right along here. This is a photo that was submitted with the application by the property owners. This is the photos that I took when I was out at the property. You see the subject property, and to the left you see the existing fence and as it relates to the screened-in porch and the side yards of the property owners. Next slide is just to the right, or to the left side. That's the neighbors at 1512. And this is a enhanced side yard photo showing the existing conditions. These are the existing conditions. This is the neighbor's fence and their enclosed porch. This is from the petitioner's property in their rear yard looking to the east. More photos looking to the east, just a different angle. This is directly behind the subject property looking east. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'll take any questions at this time.
Thanks, John. Any questions for staff? Julie?
So would the proposed fence be in addition to the fence that's there?
No, it's going to be stand on its own. It's going to be its own individual fence.
So this fence would remain?
That is the adjacent property owner's fence. The new proposed fencing would be on the petitioner's property, and it would be their own fence, correct?
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes,
Todd?
yes, I do. So getting a little ahead, so the Schaefer family at 1512, there are notes here that they essentially, if I understand, summarizing the notes, built their porch, and then the current petitioners complained and forcing the Schaefer family to seek a variance, which they were granted.
That's correct.
So it appears to me that we just have a little game going on here, that the way I look at this, and in one sense it has nothing to do with the zoning criteria, but one would assume that somebody could turn lights off, but the Schaefers seem unwilling to do that. Is that your sense of the situation? I realize they're not here.
As the zoning coordinator, I have remained neutral throughout these proceedings,
Understood.
and I'm going to continue to do so.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the material I got. It looks like, it wouldn't be that difficult to turn lights off. And I see that their porch is quite high, and it does have an opening all the way to this very high peaked ceiling. All right, I'm not sure I'm going to fold this into the criteria, but obviously there's a little bit of silliness going on here back and forth.
Any other questions for staff? Kirk, yes, no? Yes, Kirk.
Thank you. And this is a question that I asked of staff prior to the meeting, but as I now understand it, there are no regulations stating that you cannot have light escaping your residential property. Or
There
light
are-
escaping residential property.
There are lighting regulations in effect, but when it involves two residential properties adjacent or abutting one another, that is a matter that takes on a civil matter. It's between two private properties. It's lighting code is in effect when a site plan is involved or when it's commercial activity, businesses adjacent to residences, that the lighting has to be shielded and pointed down, can't directly glare onto adjacent properties.
And I don't know if you recall this conversation when we heard the petition on the porch with the purportedly the offending lights.
That was prior to my employment.
Okay.
Back in 2015. I came on just after the original case was heard. So
Lucky you.
I
So-
really want to stick to the case tonight, and I really don't want to go back in history or time.
Sure, I guess I remember, I don't know if it was an official stipulation, but I recall, just for everyone's benefit, that there was to be a conversation about lighting and privacy, which I'm guessing did not happen, because the neighbors did express concern about light and activity and visual angle of view infringing on their backyard. And this body, I believe, advised the neighbors to talk about that. I'll save the rest of my comments for discussion.
Thanks, Kirk. Any other questions for staff? Todd?
Yeah, I have one more appropriate question for John. John, my sense from the material is that this, assuming the 10-foot opaque fence were granted, it's really not going to impact any other properties. This is a very narrow space between these two houses only, and no other properties are affected. Is that your assessment?
That is my assessment. It would just be one single fence between two properties.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If by granting this variance, are we allowing the petitioner to build a 100% opaque fence, 10 feet high, as much as they want on their property?
Nope, the request is for 50 lineal feet.
Okay,
Excuse me, 40 lineal feet.
okay, so there's limits to what we're talking about.
10-foot sections, excuse me, 4 panels, 10-foot tall, 8 feet wide. So it'd be a total of 32 lineal feet. I was under the impression, I thought it was 40, but.
Okay.
So it's 4 10-foot tall, 8-foot wide panels. Just within the parameters on the submitted survey where it's highlighted shows the location.
Got it, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I see the petitioners here. You guys are welcome to step up, state your name for the record, and sign in.
I'm Becky Fogel.
And I'm Norton Fogel. Let's see, we live at 1510 Morton Avenue. Does that fulfill? So let's see. So yes, this, unfortunately, this has been going on for quite a few years here, since our neighbors built the porch. And yes, Kirk, at the first time when we came in September of 2015, we were objecting at that time, and I think you or others suggested, well, maybe you can build someone on the board suggested actually us putting in a 10-foot fence. And then at that time, we told the board that we would, because the board adjourned at that point because there wasn't a quorum or there weren't enough people to vote, but they decided to put it off till October. So then we promised at that point that we would contact our neighbors and see if we could work out an amicable solution, whether putting shades on the top of their porch. The porch, first of all, it's all white and has really bright lights. And it echoes and sends a lot of light. But anyways, we sent an email after that meeting to our neighbors saying, okay, here's the solution we propose, that you shade in the top and you support a variance for us to put a 10-foot fence. The only response we got was actually from their lawyer, telling us not to talk to them. Basically, that we should talk directly to the lawyer from Hooper Hathaway, or our lawyer should talk to them. Well, we don't have a lawyer in this case. So we tried, and even when we came back here, at the end of the day, I think we even withdrew our objection.
We said we would support it if they would
did this,
agree.
But, at the end of the day, they were going to keep it, and anyways, and so at any approach, and even before this, I mean, we spent years before this. They built the porch, to our surprise, and we hesitated for about a year to even talk to them because we were good friends with them. We had actually taken a section out of the fence and let their kids come into our yard. And then they built this to our shock, and then we asked them at that point, before coming to the board at all, we said, can you do something about this? Can you put shades on it? Can you do anything? And basically they told us no. And it was at that point that we also realized, at that point we thought it was probably about 2 feet, maybe at the most, it was about a foot, we thought, in violation of the 3-foot setback. Later on, I think it turned out it was probably about 6 inches, which still is probably about 15% of the variance, 15% of the allowable area. So,
A
yeah.
survey was done by them because there was going to be this new fence that we were talking about together. But, so when the survey was done, we realized that they extended into the setback.
Yeah.
And at that point, since we hadn't had any cooperation, we came here. So that's where we stand, and we just really would like, the 10 feet in that section would bring the fence up to that crossbeam.
If you show one of the other pictures, kind of
And
straight on.
that would put a barrier to the large globe lights. There
Yeah,
are
right
two
there.
very large globe lights that are just bare bulbs, and they light up not only our backyard, but in our living room and dining room when we're in there, and lights aren't turned on. It's as though we turn on a light. So that's our,
Yeah, I mean, we've heard we contacted at least everybody on our street about this, and people asked us, should we send an email? And we actually said, don't, because we didn't want to put them in the position of supporting us when, they're potentially friends and associated with. I mean, you might have gotten emails. We know you got at least a letter from the Schaefers talking about lacrosse balls, which really is a whole different issue, but, so anyways.
and then there was one gentleman here who couldn't stay, who came in our support, and we didn't know he'd be here, but I forgot what I was going to say.
And, I mean, at the end of the day, we just want peace and quiet in our backyard. We go back there, we kind of move into our backyard from May through October. We have almost every single meal back there. We had built our patio before they built the porch. And so that's, I mean, really all we want is just kind of a restoration of our privacy, blocking some of the lights so we can see a little bit more of the night sky and so on. That's, solely it. We'll probably, there'll be the 10-foot section, then we'll continue, everything else will be the 8-foot sections and 8-foot high fence the rest of the way, within the allowable area, so.
Okay, great,
Thank you.
thank you.
We have to
Are there
sign
any
in.
questions for the petitioners? Go ahead, Nicole.
John, can you go back to the photo that shows the gate, the fence gate? This one here. So can you describe where the 10-foot height fence would begin in relation to the corner of the Shavers? Okay.
So there's one section of their fence which is in, I believe this, it's only allowed to be 6 feet. So that gate is facing the street. And then there's one, I think, 8-foot section that is 6 feet high. And
Yeah,
that's
looks-
not opaque.
Yep.
That's following the guidelines. And then the rest of the fence is actually 7 feet there.
So we'd start at that. I think you can go 25, 25. 25 you can't have a fence, 25 you can have, or something like that.
The first 25 feet of your property, you can have a 4-foot tall
Okay.
picket fence, which has to be 50% opaque. The second 25 to 50-foot section can be 6 foot tall, 80% opaque, and then from that 50-foot mark beyond to your rear property line, you can have up to an 8-foot tall, 100% opaque fence.
So it would start at about at that spot where the 8-foot opaque fence.
If you, the first section right here with my cursor is the 6 foot, and then right about in here is where their 7 foot starts. And, go ahead.
I guess, we can maybe later, but, I guess last question. I would like to have like some definition on the site plan about where that fence would begin. I would like to see some sort of dimension there.
We make a comment? So, we would start it at that same, beyond the 6 foot, okay? So we're not including that because,
Right.
so we would be starting where you're allowed to have an 8 foot.
Okay, so.
And we actually don't even need to go 10 whole feet, our goal is to get to that beam, which would block the lights. If we could get up to that beam along there, that would be fine. And in some places, that's not 10 whole feet.
So just
Does that
to-
make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
just to confirm, I think what you're asking, Nicole, where the existing 7-foot fence starts, that's where you would
Yes.
have the 10-foot fence
Yes.
or whatever it is.
Only for
below
4
that,
panels.
For 4 panels,
Right.
and then it would be 8 feet past
After that, we would do 8 or less, all the way back.
Dave?
Yes, we continue.
So right now is your rear yard fenced in?
The rear yard?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what kind of fence is it now?
It's similar to what
It's
we used to have. It's a blockade,
So it's 100% opaque?
yes.
Yeah,
And the neighbor also has a fenced-in backyard?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So right now, your opaque fence goes all the way around, and where you're putting the 10-foot is just against where that addition was?
Yeah.
That intrudes into the side setback?
Right.
It's only along the porch and just a few, to finish out the 8-foot section, just a few feet beyond their porch.
Nicole?
Oh, so would that fence be directly adjacent to the existing fence that
Ye-
is inset
would
from
be
the
along-
property line?
Yeah,
Yes, it
so-
would be on our property line.
So you'd have a gap between 2 fences, but,
Yeah, probably
Would have to be
6
maintained
inches, because
somehow.
they're, I think, 3 inches. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm just wondering if you're gonna get a lot of stuff growing in between the fence and then you're gonna end up with.
I don't know.
I'm not sure, but the
A
other
maintenance
issue is
issue.
they put up that fence and it's a completely, it's not really a shared fence in the sense that the back is towards us, so it's sort of unsightly anyway. And the previous one that we had built with the neighbors that lived there previously, we built together, literally as a shared fence, which had the posts in the middle, so it looked nice from both sides.
Yeah, there's not going to be much sunlight there, so there may be things growing, but, I mean, and we'll have access to the bottom if we needed to kind of weed whack underneath the fence if we need to.
Dave?
I have a question for staff. When these sorts of fences go in, is there a requirement that the framing or what would you consider the
Structural side?
structural side be to the inside, not to the outside, right? Or is there no requirement?
There's no requirement. There's a structural side and a finished side, and there's no requirement to which side faces outward with the city. as with most jurisdictions.
That could be something to work on.
I always suggest to people daily to put the structural side on the inside.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kirk?
Thanks. So, in theory, if this were approved, do you think there's any opportunity for the neighbor to then want to, let me reframe that. Would this issue go away if the type of lighting changed in that addition? For example, if it was down lighting and it did not reflect around and just stayed basically
Well,
in their room?
There are a lot of issues that we didn't really even go into, but the floor is several feet high, and so it's the floors, and their property is higher. So even when they stand inside, there's the privacy issue of, you know, really being right on top of us, looking over. And
So somebody
the-
standing at the window can see directly into your
oh,
living
yeah.
space?
Yeah. So that's a 7-foot-high fence there, but I'm not sure the amount, but, you know, 2.5, 3 feet from the floor of their porch is, you know, and their property is on, uphill of us. So, I mean, they're right there, and it's, so the fence would help that issue too. And I suppose, you know, we had asked about some shades, but it's still, with that high white ceiling and everything, it's, at night, it's pretty bright.
So to that point, really quickly, in one of the letters that was provided, there are a couple additional photos from inside of Schaefer's, and you can kind of sense the elevation that you're discussing. Any other questions for the petitioner? Heather?
I guess a question and a statement. This porch, is it open or is it screened in?
Screened in,
It's not glassed in?
no.
Okay. And well, I guess a question. So your fence would be on the property line, so anything that they could either take down their fence or any weeds would be their side of the property line, is that correct?
I'm
If there were
not
two
sure.
fences were
Yeah,
I
abutting.
think that section, I mean, we're not going to build right on the property line. I think we
Mhm.
give like a 3-inch, I think, 3 to 5 inch buffer from where we would put our fence. So there would be, and they're about 3 to 5, I think, off the property line. So there would be a section there, I guess, that kind of a median strip, so to speak.
and if it would help, we could make it a little higher so we can get in there and figure it out, whatever. But yeah, there's a potential for that.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any members of the public here, but I will note that we received a few different letters. We received 2 letters from the Schaefer family, both opposed. And then another letter from another neighbor opposed. And then a motivational support type letter, I'll say, from a different neighbor. We are in discussion. Dave?
I'd like to say that this, originally the Schaefer variance, your neighbor's variance, came early in my tenure on the ZBA. And I have to say, this whole thing is one of the most heartbreaking situations I've had in my experience on the ZBA. And for those of you who were not here, the city granted a permit for the Schaefer family to build this rear porch addition. And I don't know if it was a bad survey or no survey or inadequate, but building permits were granted by the city to do the building, and it was built within the setback. And they were forced by neighborhood complaint to come to us and ask for a variance after it was built. So there were issues, and it seemed like a potentially litigious situation. And the petitioner came with lawyers and said, look, we built this. The city told us we could build this. And I was personally torn about whether we should grant them a variance or not. But to tear this really fine structure down, and the neighbors here even said, look, it's built, you know, maybe we can find an accommodation. Well, it looks to me like they haven't been able to find an accommodation. I view this as a hardship imposed by us granting the variance in the first place, and before that, by the city granting the building permits to make this happen. Now, it might have happened differently. It could, you know, they could have still built it a foot further away and still had this sort of an impact. But I see this as a situation beyond the petitioner's control, and not lacking any accommodation reached with the neighbor. I view this as a really reasonable accommodation to try to make peace out of the situation. I do want to point out, and maybe I should read it if there are viewers at home, the letter we received from a neighbor across the street on Morton, well, I'll just read it. Gentle people, as you no doubt are aware, this request for a variance is the latest development in a long-standing dispute between neighbors. As a former assistant Ann Arbor attorney who briefly advised the Zoning Board of Appeals, I am aware that this kind of request is often the most difficult to successfully resolve. Both sets of neighbors are fine people and citizens who we neighbors hold in high regard. However, it does not appear that they are now able to come to an accommodation or other solution to their disputes. It is my hope that the ZBA can assist them by approving a solution that minimizes the effect on their positions in the controversy. Resort to legalistic solutions is outweighed, in my opinion, by the need to put anger and resentment to the side. An imposition is rarely a solution. Failing such a result, adding 2 more feet to the fence, paid for by the petitioners, will not in itself have any impact on neighboring properties. Good fences can make good neighbors, and that's signed by Jim Flory at 1507 Morton, former assistant city attorney. I'm really agree with this letter, and I think we're in a position that this may be the only way that we can try to accommodate a situation that was bad from the beginning. So I urge my fellow members on the ZBA to vote in favor of this as an accommodation, and hopefully there can be peace in the neighborhood. And I might add, this is my neighborhood.
Thanks, Dave.
Todd?
Yes, I do agree with your reasoning, Dave, and I think Mr. Flory's letter is a good letter, and I like the allusion to Robert Frost. I think in this case, a higher fence is what is needed. I would vote yes. Will vote yes.
Heather?
I will also be supporting this. I'm very empathetic when our neighbors built a raised deck and were looking down at us. We planted shrubs, which took a decade. But I've been searching the Google Streetscape, and I can't, there's so much vegetation that I believe that this fence will not be visible, will not be an eyesore. You know, I do see that the neighbors on both sides have concerns, but I will be supporting putting in a 10-foot fence.
Kurt?
I'll echo some of the sentiments already expressed. I recall the last time we were dealing with the addition next door, which I think was an appropriate one because it just was a minor problem between an unofficial and an official survey. You know, we asked in good faith for the neighbor to try to work out some of the visual and lighting scenarios. And unfortunately, either that conversation didn't go well or it wasn't continued, and I note that they're not here tonight to try to come to another accommodation. My hope is that by granting this variance, perhaps there will be another conversation to see if an accommodation can be made that works for both parties financially and privacy-wise and aesthetically. Because even with the extra height on this fence, it will still be lighting reflecting off the ceiling and coming over. There's just no way to deal with that, and hopefully eventually some vegetation will take care of that, at least in the summertime, when it gets to be that high. But sadly, it seems that the neighbors have to go through expense to do it themselves. So I'm hoping that if this is approved, that you'll reach out to the neighbor and say, we're allowed to do this, now can we talk? But it's regrettable that you have to go through this, but I'll be in support.
Julie?
I think I have a slightly different view. This is only my second meeting, so I wasn't involved in all the previous. I'm envisioning my tenure on this group, and I think, okay, there's gonna be a 10-foot fence, and then the neighbors will come back with another one, and then eventually at some point, it's gonna be, there's gonna be whirligigs, and I'm not sure that a 10-foot fence is going to solve anything, because I don't know that that's the actual issue here. It sounds like there's a lot of different things between the two neighbors that maybe, I realize we're just voting on this one. I think that the comments people have made are fairly persuasive. I don't know that it's going to bother anyone else, but I don't know that it's going to solve the problem. I think walking down Morton and seeing these fences, it's going to be very obvious these people don't like each other. And I think that's kind of a shame in a neighborhood. And at some point, one side is going to have to give. I think the fence they have, I can see that the back is toward this property, but I think it's a fairly nice looking fence. I think having another fence 6 inches from this, it's going to be fairly obvious that these are people who don't get along. And I think that's kind of a shame. And I think it does affect the community as a whole. But I am persuaded by the people around me who've been addressing this issue longer. I just don't, I would hope not to see a lot more acceleration of the variances that each property wants in hopes of addressing the various issues, which it sounds like there's a fair number of issues on both sides, so.
Thanks, Julie. Any other discussion? Or a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Dave?
Petition ZBA 17-018, 1510 Morton Avenue. Variance. Based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variances from Chapter 104 Fences, Section 8:434(1)C. To allow a 10-foot tall, 100% opaque fence to be installed in the rear yard. The fence is to be installed along the north property line. This says for a total length of 40 feet. Should we change that?
East property line for 32 feet.
Along the east property line for a total length of 32 feet. After a hearing in accordance with the established procedure of the board in its sound discretion and in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the community, reduce or remit the requirements of this chapter in individual cases. So just again, total length of 32 feet along the east property line.
Is it actually the side yard, not the rear yard?
It's the side. Yes.
Okay, so we'll note
Oh,
that
is that another change?
Once you get past 50 feet, it's the rear yard.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Oh, so I consider.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion? Kirk? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Dave?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The variance is granted. Okay, moving on, we have no new business, we have no unfinished business, we have no reports or communication. Is there anyone else here from the public that would wish to speak? Nope. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Kirk, seconded by Dave. We've got an active side over here. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.